So just to briefly introduce myself to the viewers and those who don't know me, Dr. Maher Bahloul. I'm a graduate of Cornell University from upstate New York, and I have been working here in the American University of Sharjah for the past now 20 years. In the university, 18 years ago, we started a master's degree in TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages, and we have been since then working with teachers, training and conducting workshops of various types. Now, although my overall approach to language learning is a bit different from the traditional really dissected approach, where reading is taught separately, writing is taught separately, speaking is taught separately, and so on and so forth. Through this workshop, you will probably see bits and pieces of an approach that put things globally and wholly. So it's pretty much a whole approach. Okay. So the workshop will provide some creative reading opportunities through a number of picture stories. Not only does it promote reading visuals, it also incorporates writing and revising components to enhance the reading experience. Now you can take some notes on the side. You can do a few maybe little things if you have a notebook with you, but this is an interesting activity that you can do with your students. You can see a poem here. It's a Billy Collins poem titled Introduction to Poetry. You can see a poem, and then students can read the poem, and to understand the poem they can draw visuals of various scenes. Now, typically, as educators, you would like to prepare the handout ahead of time, and the handout in this case is a storyboard. Let's say 6 or 8 scenes, maybe 6 scenes, and then you ask them to visualize the scenes and then draw some pictures of each scene. Now, once students have done this, you give them 10 minutes. Once the students have sketched scenes on that particular handout, students could, if you have 20 students, the classroom can turn a little bit into some sort of an exhibition hall, and they can place all their storyboards around the walls in the classroom, and they can walk around and see the sketches of each one of them. Okay, we'll come back to this particular activity in much more details, with more exercise, with more ideas, but this is working with poetry, right? And so if you have grade 10, 11, 12, and then you would like to promote reading of poetry, they can read, understand, discuss through a number of activities. I mean, it's not always just reading and memorizing and saying that does the job. Okay. So as I said earlier, once you have a number of sketch storyboards, then the reading gets enhanced and enriched through walking in the classroom, around the classroom and looking at the storyboards, and then of course you are there to manage, and then you will see some storyboards that are much more expressive than others, and so on and so forth. But the idea is this is going to lead to some discussion of some storyboards. Okay. I would like to simply mention Bruce 2011, who kind of looked at this particular assignment and stating that using storyboards in conjunction with assigned reading helps really mitigate this frustrating scenario and becomes a way for students to think critically about a text. Okay. Now you'll be able to read the following short story, then you write a short poem. Okay. Now, I mean, as I said earlier, if you have any particular handout next to you, you can look at these 4 scenes. There are 4 other scenes, and then take some notes of each scene. After students had taken some notes, they can try to write a poem. Of course, the verse per scene is probably enough. This particular storyboard, you can see it recalls some local context in the United Arab Emirates and in the Gulf. But you have a little story. Okay. So you can take some notes now of each scene. Of course, with this particular workshop, I would like you to be in the shoes of a student. So you're giving this activity to students, and then you're telling them to take some notes of each scene. And when you take notes of the scene, there are always things that are foregrounded, things that are backgrounded. And here there is color, so they can take note of the colors. There are activities in the back. There are stores. So let them take notes, various notes and quick notes of each scene. So then later on, when they write their poems, they can see they have a few more things, and you will be surprised. Students will do the job. So from scene 1, you look at scene 2, and you see that the little boy had drifted a little bit away from the mom. And scene 3, first you pay attention a little bit, to the time. The clock is there to show a little bit the time frame. So the boy with the mom next to the cashier, and then you can see scene 4 that the boy drifted and went back away from his mom. Scene 5, you can see the mom that is going, right and left, front and back, looking for her son. And she can find it. So she rushes, and then she goes to ask a security guard. And then the security guard goes and then starts looking for the boy, and he finds it next to some chocolate section. And then finally, he brought it to the mom. You can see the mom, how she is reacting. So it's a little story of a little boy who gets lost, and you give a little bit of note-taking time, and then a little bit of poetry writing. Now remember, we have already gone through some poetry into some visuals. Now we're looking at visuals, and we're reading them creatively, and then we're writing a poem. So 8 scenes. Of course, they could be 4 scenes if you want a much shorter time. There could be also 12 scenes, and so on and so forth. So the length of the story and the length and the number of scenes depends a little bit on the time that you have. Okay. Now, after this, then you will end up with, if you have 20 students, you'll end up with 20 poems. The students have already read the visuals, so they have visually read the poems, and now they wrote the poems. Now they can read the poems aloud. And again, this also can be an activity where all the poems are posted in the classroom. and students can go around, walk around, and read the poems of each other. Now, the poem is around one event, but you will see that in fact words are quite different. So we're talking about a rich context where you have several new lexical items. But the most important aspect of this is all of it is coming from the students. Okay, so all the poems are coming from the students. All the poems are also going to the students. So with this approach, there is a lot of collaboration. There is a lot of also from the student to the student, and the teacher is pretty much a manager. So when we say teachers are facilitators, this is an excellent idea of making use of visuals to facilitate reading. Okay. Now, of course, the discussion time is an important part of any activity, because with discussions, comes critical thinking. So why this particular, students had produced, the poem such as this, why the other students had something different, and when students, find out about, differences, when they found out about, wow, how rich is this particular, poetry and so on and so forth, they tend to connect more with the reading, enjoy more the reading, and at the end benefit more. I just put here a few selected references. One of them is Bruce's from the quote I took from Bruce. So Bruce worked on this particular poetry, and then I found it quite relevant to today's presentation. Now let me take you back a little bit to the storyboard. Now, this particular storyboard is already sketched, is already colored. Okay. Now, in class, you can have the students work on the storyboard. So whether they have already something, a text, or a poem, or they simply would like to create a particular story. Okay. Now, in the workshops that I do with teachers, I have always asked them to sketch a story, which will tell a little bit, the way they, let's say, one of the events that had happened, lately, and they want to kind of sketch it. Okay. So the sketching activity can be done first with just a pencil and a handout. I'll be happy later on to share a number of resources with you. Just through the Ministry of Education, you can contact me. But the idea is this storyboarding, we can look at it as just a tool. So the tool is available. It's just a handout which you give to the students, and then they can sketch any story in 10-15 minutes. And they don't have to use, they don't have to be very, shrewd and articulate with drawings. Just, what we call stick figures is enough to draw a little bit people and what they're doing and the number of activities. Now, once students sketched a particular story, then what could always be done is that they can now think about each other and pass their stories, to each other. So if you have 20 students, so you have 20 sketches, 20 short stories, and then one had already sketched the story, and then they can pass it on to someone else who is going to look at the sketches, and then they can simply color. So they look at the sketches, and then you provide them with coloring pencils, and then they can color the scenes of the story. Okay. So you will have one who initially sketched the story. You have a second one who would color it, and then they can share them again with a third person who is going to look now at the colored storyboard, and then you tell them, now I would like you to read it. Okay, so the third one is going to read that particular story, and at this particular stage, the stories could be hang around the classroom walls. So you will have 20 nicely colored short stories, and students walk around, and then you can ask each one to read the story. So you will notice that students are reading stories which they had not either colored or sketched. Okay. This will generate a lot of not only interest but fun, in the sense that many would interpret differently the events of the story. Okay, so once you have a third person who looked at it, and then who hang it on the wall, and then who read it, then you can call the one who sketched it and the one who colored it to reflect on that particular reading, and then tell the way they interpreted the story. So with one story, you have 3 interpretations. The initial interpretation of the one who sketched it, the interpretation of the one who colored it, and the coloring is one should not think of it lightly. Coloring, a desert could be a sea can be a desert, so people would look at these quite differently, and it changes tremendously the aspects of the story. So you will have 3 people, then 3 students around each storyboard, and then you will have them talking, and they're all reading different versions of one story. So this is all coming from the students and also going to the students. And now if we stop here and say, let's do some vocabulary enrichment activities right now. Now this is where students, okay, well, thank you very much. And then I hope we'll see you some other time. Bye-bye.